I'm Dr. Genna Styles-Lyas, she, her pronouns, joining you from the DMV, also known as the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. And so I'm just thrilled to be a part of this project. I work with Americans for the Arts in their community engagement and equity through local arts agencies, housed in research, the longest title ever. But I'm happy to be here and kind of co-host this event today. But the same question to you both, Jeremy and Alon, who are you and what are your perspectives in this? And give us some goals of your organizations, and then we'll talk more about the project in just a minute.
All right, thank you, Dr. Genna. I'm Jeremy Johnson, President of Assembly for the Arts. We are a regional arts council serving the greater Cleveland area. I'm here joined today, not right here in front of you, but with Valerie Schumacher, who you may hear from a little bit later. And our organization has two big mission points. One is to expand the pie of resources for the great arts and culture sector here in greater Cleveland. They need all the resources they can get. And the second, equally important of our mission, is to expand the equity, the racial equity, all of the equities within this arts and culture sector. Those are the two big things we do. And there are a lot of arms that are part of that, which gets to one reason why we're here today.
And hi, my name is Alon Gonzalez, and I'm a creative consultant for Cleveland Votes. I'm joined by my colleague and comrade, Jerry Pena, who you'll also hear from at some points. Our mission at Cleveland Votes is, despite its name, is not just voting advocacy, but to increase overall civic engagement throughout the city of Cleveland. Yeah.
That was good. That was like a quick elevator. That's from floor lobby to floor 6. That was real quick. So I appreciate the elevator pitch from the both of you. So we are here to talk about the Cultural Week of Action and how did you all come together? Like, how was this relationship started and why did you choose each other to work on the Cultural Week of Action together? I'll ask Alon if you want to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So Cleveland Votes is expanding into, I think all of us here on the call have probably heard the term cultural strategy and the increasing cultural strategy in these different organizations. And when we started to embark on how we might use art in that advocacy sense, we knew that Assembly for the Arts was such a big convener and partner of, they serve as our as Cleveland's Art Council. They have connections to every organization, large or small, that is arts related. So it felt like a very natural fit for us to, as we embarked on this project, to partner with them.
Nice.
I would echo what Alon said. Our organization is both old and new. We had a predecessor organization, and we reconstituted ourselves just as the pandemic came forward with a new board, much more diverse, with a commitment, as I said, to our mission points. So our connection to Cleveland Votes was both organic and intentional. As a new person coming in, to be president, I was watching what is happening on the ground in our city and a lot of nonprofits. And time again, I saw Cleveland Votes working with creatives, working on voter engagement. I would attend mural unveilings that they were behind, art that was about public engagement. I said, I need to get together with these folks because we are aligned, our missions are aligned. And then we became more intentional about that process. But I was watching as I returned to my hometown of Cleveland from afar. And now we are joined we're joined side by side to push activation of creatives and others to make sure that we have an informed and engaged community, creatives included.
I love this. So here's what I'll do. I want to share just those like bigger takeaways as we go through. This was the takeaway, right? Because some folks might be taking notes. I don't know. I'm an auditory, but I like to do that kinesthetic thing of writing things down. But just so that you're pulling away some of these gems of how the relationship was developed, there might be people on this call that could work together. It was community engagement and cross-community benefits, right? So that's how Jeremy stepped into the crowd, stepped into the scene and joined hands with Cleveland Votes through just seeing their work and being there. And then talking about big picture strategy, extension? How do we make this as a part of the part of the fabric of what we do as an organization? So those are some of the takeaways I picked from this particular question. My second question is sort of what is the what's the next how does this work align in the same kind of vein? How does this align with what you're doing as an organization and the work that's already happening in your community?
I'll start. So we have a vested interest in more, literally a vested interest in making sure more creatives and more people are generally thinking about arts and culture. We literally have something going on the ballot for Cuyahoga County voters to vote to support arts and culture. So full disclosure, yes, we have an issue that we want to get on people's hands. But beyond that, we will not be a successful city if we're not more fully engaging with creatives. And there is a long history, like many of our cities, of disinvestment and non-inclusion of communities of color, creatives of color who have been driving what makes Cleveland vibrant. So part of what we're doing is voting for the arts literally, but also looking how are we better engaging creatives to be at the table, to create the table.
Yeah, and we found out, so, Jeremy is being modest about how we know that they want to be at the table. Simply for the Arts did a series of listening sessions with tons of artists throughout Cleveland. And one of the things that came out of that was that they had mentioned over and over again that they wanted to be a part of advocacy issues, that they wanted to know how to use their artistic practices to move issues forward. So in comes Cleveland Votes, who are like, oh, well, we're gonna help you do that. We're gonna actually create a partnership and do that. So, we are actually responding to what we saw on the ground that artists wanted to do, and then created programming and sort of our Cultural Week of Action project around just that.
I love that. And I think there was one other person, Alon, from your organization. Jerry, is Jerry in the room? I know I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I know that Jerry had a really good point about, the progress and how this is aligning with what you all are already doing. Jerry, if you want to come off of mute and just add a little bit to the conversation, I don't mind. We bringing everybody in.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me into the conversation, and good afternoon, everyone. The only thing I would add is that we've been really focusing on making sure that within our civic engagement work that we bring natives into that space. We feel that, they have a really strong voice, especially in the city of Cleveland, where art plays a major role in our everyday lives. Most folks don't know, and I always give a shout out to Cleveland. We have some of the best museums in the country. And so making sure that creatives really have a voice and space to really highlight all the issues in the city and be a voice around civic engagement, I think is important for our work. So, all right.
Thank you, Jerry. And you can stay in the room with us if you want to, because I love to just have you always able to be on standby. I know we might have to kick in Valerie too. So anyways, love to hear more about this conversation. Let's talk about how it aligns. Here's the slide on how it aligns with folks. So if we're taking notes, we're keeping up with the conversation. Jerry talked a little bit about the power that arts and culture have to benefit civic engagement. Alon was talking about how artists want to be activators. They want to do this work. That's what they learned from the listening session, right? And then Jeremy talked a little bit about how we increase the way that funds are distributed by increasing the equity of all of that. So again, just dropping in those little gems as we do our note taking. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all walks in the park down a yellow brick road. It's hard. So talk us through a little bit about what has been successful for you all and what has been something that has been challenging, and how do you navigate those stumbling blocks?
I'll just jump in. Sometimes you have to be ready for what's to come. So when Assembly was created, all this talk about equity in the pie was at the same time as ARPA dollars. Y'all remember American Rescue dollars were filtering finally down to our county and our city, hundreds of millions of dollars. And we at Assembly, we galvanize the creative community to write the postcards, to go before city council, to be active, to say, these dollars should also support our creative community. It took 2 years, 2.5 years. Like you said, it's not all sunshine and roses, but literally this month, the city of Cleveland, after all of this advocacy, has committed $3 million to what they call the Transformative Arts Fund across our city. Artist-led projects, majority of color. 3 years to that, almost 3 years, but with leadership from the city. That's an example of success where this advocacy, being in front of our elected officials constantly, is reaping results for disinvested communities across our city. So that's one example, the Transformative Arts Fund, led by the city, but initiated and pushed by the arts and cultural community.
Alon, you want to step in?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say capacity. I mean, this work is really fun and it's really fulfilling and wonderful, but it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of trust. And I talked to my team about this earlier this weekend because we spent all weekend working. Shout out to us, but just, the emotional capacity as well as the time, like that is always something that we're trying to figure out and manage.
Yeah, and Jerry, do you want to talk a little bit about some more of like some of the stumbling blocks you all have seen based on, perspective wise?
Yeah, I mean, I would just, so Alon mentioned trust. I think that's huge. I think in working, especially, we've been really focusing on working with mostly artists of color or artists from, communities that have been sort of disparaged along the years. And so having those creatives sort of trust the institutions and the organizations we're trying to partner up with, I think has been not tough, but very interesting conversations. But I think we've gotten folks to a point where they are willing to collaborate and they're willing to make those connections because they know it's for the betterment of the city and the communities they represent.
Yes. Okay. So there's a lot that I'm pulling, these nuggets that I'm pulling from between the successes and the stumbling blocks. So let me share my screen one more time to kind of get to some of the roots of, I think, what everybody's sharing here today. So the successful part, we kind of got into it a little bit early and also kind of throughout this, like a through line of learning from listening, right? So learning from listening. If you are in the entry stages of project management or project presentation or getting into this work, have listening sessions. That might be a really great way to kick it off as we prepare for that September 27th through October 5th Cultural Week of Action, right? Galvanize the creatives to make some noise. Okay, that's what Jeremy did. Like, let them get in it, right? Because I'm a creative, I identify as a creative, so I'm gonna speak for myself. I like to shake things up a little bit. So get them in there to help shake up the situation and then show up in a united front. Alon was talking about building out that coalition, for lack of a better phrase, arm in arm to help us get in there. But Alon also talked about this next space, which is capacity, which was given love in the chat, right? Those are some stumbling blocks. Capacity in all shapes and sizes and forms. We want to be addressing that. And so we put these stumbling blocks in here to identify things so that you don't trip and fall and stumble and break something, that you all can do this work and kind of be able to be mindful of some of those stumbling blocks, like what relates to creatives, and then changing the perspective of how artists are viewed in the space. Those are some of those stumbling blocks that we want to make sure that we know from the outset. This, I think, is going to be my last question. It feels like things are flying by today.
And I want to just interrupt. Valerie
yes.
Schumacher is also
Yes.
here from my team. And I'm sorry, I am galvanizing voices, so I'm getting on another campaign call related to galvanizing. So please, let's continue this and force. Thank you, Dr. Genna.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Jeremy. You know how these CEOs are. I'm grateful to have you in our panel. and grateful to see you continuing to do the work in the midst of it all. So welcome, Valerie, in this space, and thank you for representing Assembly for the Arts. But the question for the group is, what is meant for the future of this project? Right? CWA is a thing. It's an event. It is a thing that passes just as time. We are grateful for the opportunity. And we would love to do more of this work. We would love to talk about how this continues. And so what is meant for the future? What's some of the ongoing power building things that you are looking towards to continue to create a multi-racial, just democracy? And how is arts and culture, or how do you see arts and culture fitting in that sort of bandwidth here? And I'll start with Alon, because I know that things happen kind of slowly, but things are happening, right? Like stuff is going. Oh, you unmuted and then muted
Oh,
again.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Well, I said something before, but I would say the future of this project is just like building like a collective of organizations who might not normally engage in this way, and engaging with them in this way for maybe the first time and hopefully many more times after this. So I think just leaning on community and village mentality and building each other up.
I love that. Continuing to lean even after, before, during, and after. Valerie, you could step in too. What do you, as from a Assembly for the Arts, working with this partnership with Cleveland Votes, how do you see this work going forward?
Kind of building on the idea of some of the newer players and recognizing that we're working with people who have also been doing this for years and meeting people where they are and respecting that they have a lot of history here, and listening. I really loved that earlier in the conversation, listening for action. So you have to listen first, but then you need to act on what you've heard. And that's really a big part of what we do. And then just recognizing that, again, there is a history of artist investment, and making sure that we're looking a history of artist investment and artist disinvestment, and being really thoughtful and careful about the equitable distribution of funds moving forward, of advocacy moving forward, of who's being heard and whose voices are we pushing to the forefront. So.
I love that, acknowledging all of that in this space, right? I'm going to simplify, because we have some beautifully smart and talented people on this call, in this panel, and so I'm gonna very, very simply state what they all have beautifully addressed in our conversation in this last question. But the future of this project, first and foremost, I pulled out is that we want to do it with equity at the forefront. Shifts are happening, but it's slow sometimes, and we just need to acknowledge that. As we think about this future long term, we need to make sure that we are in it. We are in understanding that shifts are happening, right? But keeping chugging along with that collective that Alon was talking about, with us together doing this work. So I think that we have a really beautiful opportunity with the Cultural Week of Action to just sort of start the conversation.